Early in the morning, it's Thursday, September 22nd, 2011. It's 9:49 a.m. And this is Day 9 Daily number 349. For any of you watching live, I had to pre-record this segment. And I figured, why not pre-record it live? Because it's really hard for me to actually feel like I'm talking to anybody if I'm not. So, for any of you watching at 7 p.m., the good old time, this is a pre-recording. I am off at Harvey Mudd College doing a lecture about assumptions in competitive gaming. So I'm really excited about that. And I still wanted to do a daily because nothing makes me happier than doing a daily. And I figured why not do LiquidHerO versus EGIdra, sort of as a celebration that Protoss have gotten the recent small set of buffs. It's not helping in GSL, but really exciting to see the Warp Prism has been boosted, that the Immortal has been boosted, and that, of course, my little Protoss excitement has been boosted as well. This coffee is going to keep me going. And of course it again has family of my roommate on it. It's kind of weird, the idea that I regularly am just pouring coffee into these intimate family photos of my roommate just out. Where is this? I think this is somewhere in Europe. Yeah, this is from the Czech Republic. It looks like. That's so sweet. Fantastic. So, I want to know if there's anything else to do. Oh yes, because the Europeans are watching me live right now because it's 10 in the morning, I'd like to remind all of you that it is Euro Mono Battles on Sunday morning. It should be at, I think it's at 8 p.m. CEST. So it should be 11 a.m. my time. 11 a.m. my time, I think, is when it's going to be at. There'll be an email going out to all you subscribers. So, you know what? Screw it. It's at 11 a.m. Calling it. So definitely show up to that with a subscription handy. Fun Day Monday next week. Submit a game of you expanding 4 times before you do anything. Or having 4 bases before you do anything. So that's expand, expand, expand. Now you can do stuff. You have 4 bases total. Newbie Tuesday is the attack timing Newbie Tuesday. I went into detail on that in the last daily right at the start. So if you want to know the Newbie Tuesday in detail, watch the previous daily of Dong Regu versus Thorzane. Right at the start, I go into depth on that. It's basically do an attack timing from 10 to 12 minutes and do the same attack timing a whole bunch of games in a row and adjust, and send me the replay pack. Yes, good. So let's hop into the game right away. And we might have a little bit shorter of a daily. I'm not going to be running any commercials in this one because I'm recording it early because I have to go. Let's just go ahead and step right into it. LiquidHerO spawning in the south position as the blue Protoss. EGIdra in the north position as the red Zerg. Idra is sort of the hallmark of just very solid timing Zerg. Like, just very, very good with the little teensy tiny things, like making sure he's always building drones, making sure that his overlord timings are always very crisp and well planted. A lot of people say that Idra has good mechanics, and I mean, he has great mechanics. I mean, obviously, Idra has incredibly good mechanics, but I don't think that that is the strongest point of Idra's play by a long shot. I think that the strongest aspect of his play, the play that really just gets me all excited about everything, is the fact that he can just do these weird optimizations, these magical discoveries of extra resources. I say it a million times. You'll be in the exact same situation with the same number of units, same number of drones, but Idra will have an extra upgrade because he's just rearranged his timings a little teensy bit to get that little extra upgrade up. So whenever he builds buildings, I'm always like, ooh, when exactly did he build that? Because it's always very, very carefully optimized. It's this intense zooming in that he does that makes him very potent. A lot of people want to say, oh, his mechanics is really good at just having a lot of stuff. He has a lot of roaches, therefore he must be macroing really well. And his macro's fine, but it's the fact that he's able to get his third hatch up like 3 minutes earlier than everyone else that allows him to have a whole bunch of extra units. Again, the decision of the timing of the hatch is different from just constantly remembering to go back and get those larva injects. And the reason I bring that up is that there are really, really, really solid macro players, and they will feel different. They will have a different feel. Idra will have a lot of units at a time you didn't think he could. Good macro players will consistently just have a lot of units out. So again, just want to make that distinction quite clear. Now, LiquidHerO, the reason a hero is exciting me quite a bit is that he is doing different things in the Protoss I guess just in Protoss vs. Zerg in general. And you know what? Screw it. Story time. Let's talk about Brood War Protoss vs. Zerg. Brood War Protoss vs. Zerg. We talked a little bit about this on the last State of the Game episode in the third part. Liquid Tyler did a good job of saying this, so I'll just kind of generally repeat it. Protoss vs. Zerg was in a very icky spot in Brood War for a long time. It was around 55 to 58% win percentage for Zergs. Zergs were just straight up mostly winning the matchup. And again, this is like 6-7 years in a game when people have really figured stuff out. Now, there was a whole lot of one basing that the Protoss could do. And for any of you who haven't played Brood War, you don't need to know specifically what they did, but you get this sense of, well, you know, think of one basing in Protoss vs. Zerg in StarCraft 2. Yeah, you can go like Fast Immortals or a 4 Warp Gate or some Blink Stalkers or some Dark Templar or maybe some Stargate. There's a lot of options to do that you could maybe play around with. But if you're up against someone who's really, really good, he's just going to crush you. He's just going to know all the tricks. He's going to know how to have enough units. He's going to know not to overextend himself, and you're going to end up losing. So that's kind of how Brood War felt. Most Protosses were going, well, there are options in one basing, but I need to rely on two basing in some regard. So for a long time, players were trying to get out really fast speed zealots to try to do a lot of pressure, just trying to get a whole bunch of Dragoons and High Templar out, do some timing pushes like that, maybe go some Dragoon Reaver. And it wasn't quite working. Some people would try to do some Corsair stuff, and it wasn't quite working. The Corsairs arrived a little bit slowly. But Protosses could still win by having good macro and good timings. But it was a yucky position to be in. I sort of established that it was yucky. And all the analogs are kind of the same in StarCraft 2. You can imagine trying to do like early expanding and doing a 4-gate push, early expanding doing a 5-gate push, early expanding doing a 6 or 7-gate push. They're different variations on the same idea of I have to get a big ball of units and go hit him. So, why do I bring up this whole story? Well, Bisu did a very, very interesting thing. In StarCraft 1, Overlords all had detection. You didn't have to make Overseers. Every single Overlord had detection. So Dark Templars just seemed pretty useless against Zerg. And Corsairs were only really good in really huge numbers. If they were in small numbers, they couldn't really do much. And they were only really good against Mutas and Scourge. So what if he's going Hydralisk or something? It was just like, yeah. But what Bisu did is he combined these two kind of useless units, the Corsair and the Dark Templar, and he just made a ton of Corsairs, aggressively moved all across the map with them, picking off Overlords, keeping the Zerg contained, sometimes going Dark Templar to kill the guy off, sometimes not, just expanding straight away, and it suddenly became the standard in Protoss vs. Zerg overnight. It was this revolutionary moment in PvZ, and he played against the best Zerg player in the world who had figured everything out. His Zerg vs. Protoss was at like 88% win rate, just couldn't lose it, and Bisu 3-0'd that player in the finals of a major tournament, and everyone was kind of like, whoa, huh. And everyone reincorporated this style in to their play, and then all of a sudden Protosses were beating Zerg more than 50% of the time for the next 15 months. So, what's crazy to me is that LiquidHerO, I feel, kind of has this, like, a lot of people are calling him the mini Bisu. Many people are calling him the mini Bisu because he's just doing things a little differently. For me, it's not that Hero is doing... nice placement, Raffle. It's not that LiquidHerO is just doing a trick to help him get better. It's this like whole separate line of thinking that's really kind of getting me excited. And it has a lot more aggression than your usual Protoss does. But it also has a lot more opportunities for retreating and flexibility. So again, aggression, but not commitment. It's not like a 5-gate push where I really have to do some damage. You can think of it akin to something like a Blink Stalker can run in and maybe do some poking damage, but then it can run out again. And LiquidHerO... Oh, what a badass. So LiquidHerO is going to do your typical early expand, and all's good in this situation. Continuing to sort of loop around. In particular, we are seeing that the Protoss saw that there is absolutely no gas in here. Part of the reason why he was willing to build this Nexus before this forge. Now, there's this sort of general idea that more and more Protosses are doing, which is to get just one cannon, maybe two, and then to tech really fast with almost no units. Now, the history of PvZ in StarCraft 2 is hyper relevant here, because it's this idea that people will be trapped by, which is that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I actually hate that logic in a lot of circumstances, because a lot of times things that work can be improved upon greatly. So here's the way that old ZVP used to work in StarCraft 2. Oh my gosh, Zergs were doing Roach all-ins. They were early expanding and doing Ling Baneling all-ins. They were just making a bunch of Zerglings and going for it. So what Protosses you'd see do was really turtle up really tightly. Get multiple cannons, 3 to 4 cannons in good positions. Get Zealots and Sentries up. And then do something else. All the all-ins that Zergs were doing would be stopped. They would be stilted, but there was a problem when Zerg started to go for more down the macro route. Now, what we've seen players do that I don't think a lot of the, the people who are still stuck in the PvZ traffic jam, per se, it's a technique that those sorts of players are not doing as much, which is to, if you see your opponent doing anything in the macro vein of things, to go nuts with your teching. To go absolutely nuts. So we have the Cybernetics Core planted here. Some very smart positioning. We can obviously do a wall off with a pylon here. We can obviously do something like build another gateway here. Chrono boosting on the Nexuses. Obviously very important, good stuff. Probes starting to head out. And a Zealot being made. There are so many essential decisions popping up in just a moment's time that are very, very big. They're very, very, very big. And first of all, we're going to see LiquidHerO build a pylon over here. We see the Zealot is now out. We see this Twilight Council pop out as well. This is a huge moment, because what we're seeing LiquidHerO do is say, yeah, I'm going to be fine versus whatever you try to throw at me early on. I already saw that you were gearing up to do a sort of macro style of play. The probe is going to re-scout up here. And he could re-scout up here, but a lot of times you have to make sure you know what you're trying to look for, briefly poking up here to make sure there's no huge swell of Lings coming. Notice that if we scout up here first, we will spot this one hatchery, but if we scouted up here and then to the left first, we can occasionally get a little bit of spotting up on those Lings. Now, I normally describe that as a little thing in my dailies. Oh, look at this little trick that he can do. He found a problem that he was losing to a lot of Zerglings early on, and he fixed it. What a nice little trick there. It's way more than that. The Protoss player really needs to hit a point where he says, do I do crazy fast tech and do something really hard, or do I do crazy high defense to try to defend and keep myself alive? And this is the brilliance that we're seeing so many players do. One cannon and a late sentry, and that's it. That's kind of incredible. This is kind of an incredibly skimpy defense that we're seeing players do. I've even seen Cruncher do this, and it's really impressed me how long Cruncher just stays on one cannon, one gateway, and how he's pretty much fine for a long period of time in the game. So I want to encourage all you Protoss players to be thinking like this, cutting ridiculous corners early on, and thinking of a way to stop cutting them suddenly if you need to suddenly throw down a bunch of cannons. We've seen Hero very, very good at this in a number of ways. So the probes are under attack. See, we've already built a pylon over here. And this first Zealot, this is a starting point to this cool mindset of LiquidHerO's. Again, to re-emphasize, sure, everything that's going on here, the general idea of doing more tech and less defense, this is something that all Protoss players should do. And now what we're seeing LiquidHerO do is this big, fast, Dark Templar tech. Okay, that's great. That's something that a lot of Protoss players have done before. But this and this are starting to hint at LiquidHerO's general theme of doing little bits of aggression, that he can always do some retreating. He doesn't have to commit to aggression. One Zealot is not a major commitment of an attack. One Pylon here is not a major commitment of an attack, but it is still an aggressively placed movement. Now, one thing that I want to note about this Pylon, in terms of problem solving, it's very easy to go, oh, I better do a Pylon here early so I can be aggressive. But I want to flip that just a little bit and say, if you have a problem like I can't be aggressive, where do I do the timing attack? Notice that this Pylon went down at like 5 minutes. An early solution to a question you have later. And that is an important concept. If you have a question later, like, how do I stop his nth expansion? Or hell, let me actually just make this really explicit. If I'm in a situation where Zerg has like 3 bases, and I'm Terran and I can't quite figure out how to do a good push, my question in the moment is, how do I deal with this Zerg that gets 3 bases up? And a lot of times you try to answer that question right now. You try to say, well, maybe I should get some Thors, maybe I should do some drops, maybe I should try to take a third myself. Try to answer those questions earlier, right? Hey, right now he's on 3 bases. I can't really seem to deal with a player who's on 3 bases. What do I do? Well, maybe I should have harassed him with Hellions earlier. Maybe I should have been putting marine pressure on earlier. This Protoss player, how do I deal with a macro-style Zerg player? How do I try to put pressure on EGIdra who's taking all these bases? Well, I will plant a Pylon down here for aggression earlier so that when that problem arises, I already kind of have a pre-packaged solution. And because this video is being recorded at 10 a.m. Pacific, and all the Europeans are watching, the Europeans are stating that they love me. And I would like to state that I too love Europeans. Now, if we pop on over to Camp EGIdra, everything is just immaculate. I mean, the larva inject timings are looking great. Whoopsie daisy not having guys in Geyser, but that's because he just built it. Getting his layer up. Having his third up, having just enough money to spend on the larva that he just got. I mean, EGIdra is just really good at StarCraft 2. Already having a big drone lead, but not quite as big as one might imagine. And this is the point where Protoss players are starting to go, ew, yucky, yucky, what do I do? And there's this sort of general theme statement, this ideology many folks are having, which is the following. I gotta do damage to Protoss early on if I want to win. Amazingly, EGIdra did see that Dark Shrine. And this Dark Shrine is an example of that. People going, I really need to do damage to a player in order to win. But notice that this is the first step of non-committal aggression by LiquidHerO. These are not Dark Templar that need to do damage. These are Dark Templar that can do damage. And a little tiny thing LiquidHerO does. This is a very small movement tactic. It's very brilliant. He's going to step in with all 3, and then he's going to pull back out and split them up. How many of you build 3 Dark Templar and try to send 1 here, and 1 here, and 1 here? That's committing to the aggression. Each Dark Templar needs to do something. But look at this. We're going to try to really dig in deep here. You see a little micro tactics going on by LiquidHerO. He does a little bit, and then he's going to pull out, and he's going to split them up. Nice. Another thing LiquidHerO does. Notice that we don't have 6, 7, 8 warp gates in Robo or anything like that. We have some warp gates, but we're just getting blink. We're getting some sentries up. We're getting some upgrades. And we're still going to be making a lot of probes in this moment. So Hero, look at this. Commits, or doesn't commit with his aggression. Non-committal aggression. And this, I actually think, is the moment in gameplay where a lot of Protoss players are just like, Zerg has 3 bases. He got him fast because he's EGIdra, and EGIdra has the money timings on this stuff. Oh, God, what do I do? Oh, maybe my Dark Templar will do damage. Well, they didn't. Well, that's game. Oh, what the heck is this? What? You and your Family Talk members now have free calling to any U.S. mobile phone? Cool. Muted my phone. This is where many Protoss players are like, God, EGIdra has everything that he wants right now. I feel like I have to have done damage. Even a lot of my builds in PvZ revolve around me requiring to do damage. 3 Void Rays, a whole lot of Phoenixes, this sort of thing. And now this is the weird moment where you have to ask yourself, what the hell do I even go for at this point in time? What do I even go for? This makes no sense. We're going to start to see it crop up. But the theme that I want I want to just point out is that LiquidHerO does a lot of this non-committal aggression. Continuing to poke and prod, holding watchtowers. Not too Dark Templar to hold the watchtowers, but he's even getting a third to try to do maybe a little bit of stuff. It won't quite work out. But as he's doing this aggression, he expands. Okay, this is so great. But notice the way in which he's expanding to this third. If OGS-MC was doing this, what we've seen OGS-MC do is have 1, 2, 3 gateways, and that's it. And then he gets Colossus. OGS-MC will still build 3 gateways here, but he'll sit with Zealot, Sentry, Stalker, Colossus here, and defend, 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 defend. Not LiquidHerO, pushing out with this small group of Stalkers, this small group of Sentries. And the Dark Templar cannot maintain, so that's fine. This is no problem. Excuse me. He's moving out with a small group of Stalkers and Sentries. And this is, again, a very non-committal group because he can blink out and force field in almost any situation and be in really good shape. LiquidHerO's actually not spent a lot of time back on his side of the map unit-wise. Look at this. Blinking up, taking down an Overseer, having some clear targets, way behind on food, ridiculously far behind on food. Especially considering EGIdra's about to just kick up into high gear. And of course, even if we go to the Everyone tab, we can see that EGIdra's getting his third hatch. He already has his layer tech up. He's already getting the infestors and the pathogen glands. He has a huge number of drones, 78. I mean, EGIdra is set and ready to have his food skyrocket all the way up. Oh hell, EGIdra's taking a 4th base. And even has that macro hatch. So he's looking really good, but still. LiquidHerO establishing this small troop of guys to do little bits of damage. These little bits of damage, and look at that. Wasn't that kick-ass? This is a little tiny push that you can do. A little teensy tiny push that you can do to maybe do a slight nudge of damage. I mean, if we even come to the units lost tab, we see a couple more units lost from EGIdra. Here's some Dark Templars in there, but we didn't necessarily need to keep those up. And now we have LiquidHerO going for this gateway unit mix that not that many players have gone for. Sort of historically, the Colossus is sort of the big damage dealer. LiquidHerO, though, getting his gas geysers up early. And look, more non-committal aggression already. Having a DT here to do a little poking, but having this pylon here, this early pylon, to do some goody-good business. But we're seeing LiquidHerO looking like he is way behind. There's the Storm incoming, and this Storm I think is quite key. Zealot Archon has recently had a huge surge in popularity, and it's easy to just at any point say, well, I want to be going for Zealot Archon. But this opening that LiquidHerO did, going for the Dark Shrine really fast, this can transition into Zealot Archon. But if we went for Blink, getting Archons and Blink and Sentries doesn't make as much sense as just getting the Storm. We can retreat and pull back and force field, and that works better with the Storms. We can't really throw down a bunch of force fields and then have our Archons knock them down. So this is one of these little frowny moments where, of course, looks like we are getting absolutely bear mauled apart. And everything's just looking so grody. LiquidHerO is, of course, going to do this little micro-tactics. Popping up and down. And this is the point when I was watching the game when I was like, yep, LiquidHerO is super screwed. What the hell does he go for? I've seen some cool ideas at this point in time. But what now? And this is where I really think LiquidHerO's thought process kicked into high gear. There's the robotics facility. This I actually noticed after the fact. I noticed after the fact that this robotics facility was coming down right now. EGIdra has a good amount of stuff, but not quite enough to kill him. 24 roaches, 5 infestors. But, you know, with the amount of warp-ins that we can get in, I mean, basically one round, it's still going to be enough. But I was blown away to see this robotics facility so late because you always end up getting this observer up really early or something like that. But not LiquidHerO. Not LiquidHerO. In fact, he just did all the poking and prodding with the DTs, the Zealot at the start, all his Blink Stalkers and Sentries, and that's what allowed him to get this scouting up. LiquidHerO is not actually going to be expanding here to the center. I wanted to state that now. But we're going to come back to it in a bit. He's going to be building some forward pylons. High Templar with Storm are wicked good against roaches. This composition is a roach murdering force. And what the hell do you go for right now? Again, what do you go for? What do you even do? Well, the one thing that I want to just note is that LiquidHerO is going to be expanding over here instead of expanding over here. And he's going to be using warp prisms all over the map, doing pressure here and here. I want you to just look at the map and think how clearly correct it is for him to be doing a warp prism play and expanding back to this side. Expanding away from the enemy when we have this nice little mobile force of gateway units is a big shift. Ordinarily, when we have our Colossus force, we expand to the center because we can defend it easily and we can attack and do all that goody goodness. And a lot of people would point to EGIdra as having fallen apart at this phase in the game. And sure, maybe there are ways to better deal with this crazy amount of war prisms we're going to see from LiquidHerO. But still, LiquidHerO essentially forced this to happen. And of course, clearing this little right side out. And look at this. After he has gotten a ridiculous amount of gateways, 10 gateways up, he is actually chrono boosting out a ton of these war prisms. Getting a lot of war prisms up. And of course, focusing on the upgrades. That's another thing that you can quote-unquote go for. Dark Templar gets taken down. Look at this. Expanding here. And we're going to see the war prisms sort of kick into action. One of the best techniques to deal with against infestors is just having units in different places. Now, 30 infestors will not kill your units off faster than 5 infestors. It's impossible because fungal growth doesn't stack. Let me just make that explicit. If I have 5 zealots and I hit them all with 1 fungal growth, if I have 30 infestors, doesn't matter. I just go fungal growth, wait a little bit, fungal growth, wait a little bit, fungal growth. And that takes a hell of a long time. But if I have, 5 infestors, it's still the same rate of time. And in other words, if you spread out a lot of your forces, there's this huge time problem that infestors have, that they kill things off so slowly, and there's no way to really accelerate that. And LiquidHerO is not waiting until he gets to 200 food and pushing, which was the old traditional logic. He is waiting until he has the warp prisms popping out, and now he is just going to be attacking in a bunch of different places at once. This is a great technique for late game, and in particular, notice what kind of group is moving along the left side. This is not, I don't want to say that, oh, look, it's all zealots. It is minerals over here. The main force that you have is going to be gas. Mainly gas. Blink Stalkers, Templar. So we're going to solve as many problems as we can with minerals. And one thing that I just freaking love, where is that support bay? It's somewhere over here. Yeah, look at this. Gravitic drive. Warp prism speed. Yes. So as we move over here, yes, this can be a little bit of a painful engagement. The fungal growths aren't going to be going down any faster. Storm, really good against roaches. Oh no, we are going to be losing this whole force. But yeah, Zerg units are not as fast as one might think. So boom, here comes this little swing in force. And suddenly, EGIdra has to pull all the way back, and we're gaining this time. Isn't it great that we expanded all the way over here? And now what do we have in this force? Blink Stalkers, mobile, non-committal aggression. We can be as aggressive as we want with these Blink Stalkers. We can always blink out. And now we have these amazing little zealot assault forces moving in. And oh, look at this. A storm drop in the main, picking things off. Nexus continuing to sort of approach completion. And if only we had a little bit of vision, we saw LiquidHerO kind of teasing the idea of blinking up onto there. And look at the Warp Prism. The Warp Prism is still in position. This expansion has been taken out. Suddenly we have an Expo lead against our Zerg player. All of a sudden we have an Expo lead. Still more Warp Prisms being produced. And again, the emphasis on the minerals that we're spending to solve our problems. We've only spent 300 gas in all this aggression, which is one storm drop here. We did zealot drop here, zealot warp-ins here. We're going to be just walking, just walking the zealots up there. And now we're in pretty much your standardly good position, doing some feedbacks, making some Archons. Sure, EGIdra has a ridiculous food lead, but while all this is going on, we can still do a warp-in over here. Still do a little bit of that pain bringing. DT's getting morphed in because we picked off those Overseers. And this is not your typical spot for Zerg. Zerg is used to just being able to waltz in and do a lot of damage here. And the logic for a lot of Zergs is when they waltz in and do a lot of damage, it may not work, but at least I can have some sort of recovery period. At least I can do some sort of like extraneous damage somewhere else. Or excuse me, at least I have like a whole bunch of extra resources that I can use to reflood. And yes, the EGIdra is getting his whole new slew of units. But of course, they're a little bit slow to recoup everything. We do have a Colossus out. Note how cool it was. We get Warp Prism speed first. We favor the Warp Prisms over the Colossus. Colossus is kind of our last step. Having another speed Warp Prism moving up here. And there's just not that much that EGIdra can really do about this. If this expansion were here, this would be a huge problem. And notice again, ooh, we have a Warp Prism all the way up here, and all of EGIdra's forces are at the opposite end of the screen. Speeding it up. Come on. There's this battle engagement going on. Hero could have played this a little bit better, focused a little bit harder on managing these warp-ins. But still, the whole logic is there. It's a little subtle thing of, yeah, I guess I'm just gonna make my nexuses far away. And the primary army from LiquidHerO, mainly gas, Archons, Templar, Stalkers, Colossus, problems being solved all over the map with minerals, Warp Prisms, Zealots. So good, so good. And now, technically, EGIdra could have done something like made, I don't know, 6 spine crawlers at this base, and 6 spine crawlers at this base, and 6 spine crawlers at this base. But notice that it's the same effect as you just killing it off. If he spends all that money on those defenses, then he can still only do about 1 wave of attacks here. And then you can still do some warp-ins and do a lot of damage and keep him pinned back. And look at this, again, non-committal aggression. This is not a killing blow that LiquidHerO is doing up on this high ground. It's a little tactic that he can do that he can always pull out of. Unless, of course, the infestors end up walking in. But we'll never have our whole army perfectly locked down when we're spreading out all over the place like this. And look, he just blinks out, maybe loses a little more than he should. Minerals! Solving our problems all over the map. And in the meantime, our gas army is just continuing to expand and grow. Ninja mode, ninja style, a lot of cannons get constructed by LiquidHerO throughout the game. Building a lot of cannons over here. Cannons are a little bit of a skimped on resource from Zergs. Excuse me, from Protosses. Not taking this middle one. Notice that the huge problem that Protosses normally have in late game is the Broodlords just waltzing on in from the high ground. Huge problem. But these expansions, now that you look at it, it's like, oh my god, this is so easy to defend from Broodlords. Yeah, oh look, the Stalkers are like, yeah, just marching their way right up there, still producing Warp Prisms. How sweet is that? Getting the Void Rays up. I kind of feel like maybe he didn't need necessarily to get these Void Rays up, but it's still part of this aggression idea that Hero does quite a bit. In fact, in the other game that these two played, we saw Hero dropping Warp Prism, doing a force field at the ramp, and then just rallying Void Rays into the main and warping in Zealots. All of his units are able to be used aggressively. The last thing that we're going to end up taking is this middle base.
Upgrade complete.
And sure, we've seen EGIdra float a ton of resources all game long, but he's also been maxed, like, all game long. Per usual, Dark Templars cannot maintain. Warping in with minerals! Oh, we also have 2 High Templar there, that's great. We're also attacking along this left lane. Target firing the Greater Spire. Oh, that's so sweet. EGIdra can't exactly be in all these places at once. Warp Prism. Still kind of floating around. Gas units being warped in to reinforce the rest of our army. And in pretty much the most baller thing I've ever seen, LiquidHerO actually made that look kind of easy for the remainder of the game. Now, I intentionally kept that on the LiquidHerO cam for like the whole game. If you watch it in just your broad, straightforward way, if you just watch it like from the Everyone cam or watch it on the stream, as I know many of you did for DreamHack Valencia, it would look like EGIdra had this huge advantage and that he messed up, or that LiquidHerO pulled some brilliance up. But, you know, if you just come back to this moment in the game, right when, I guess it was closer to, yeah, 12 minutes. When all this stuff was coming on, you were seeing these great techniques used by LiquidHerO to try to, like, move forward, move back, move forward, move back. And though this traditionally would be a moment where the Protoss player was just totally freaking screwed, we see the delightful truth that these Templar are warping in just in time, and we can actually get another huge slew of warp-ins off our 10 warp gates and be in decent shape to defend. And no big deal, we're going to just go mass warp prism. And that's something that's kind of cool to me, because there's this weird feeling when you watch a player who really knows what he's doing versus a player who kind of knows what he's doing. The kind of knows what he's doing player kind of has this this weird tension, and you look at his screen, you're like, oh my god, he might be screwed, and he like kind of pulling back and playing defensively and sort of holding up. And then you watch a player like LiquidHerO play, and it's just like he's moving forward in ways that you're like, can you do that? And then you go to the everyone cam, and you're like, oh, I guess you can. Oh, and I guess these warp prisms are actually really good. Oh, and those minerals that I would always stockpile and not know what to do with, he's doing a lot with them, and they're doing huge damage. It's really cool. Really cool stuff. Let's go ahead and take some questions from Markio's amazing question, Graber. The question, Graber, clear it. Alright, the server is waiting to respond. Clear. Alright, there we go. Taking some questions, and then I'm just hanging up on you. F5, F5. There are currently no questions. Guys, ask some questions, damn it. Here it was good. I don't think I talked enough about how awesome just a couple of Stalkers and Sentries are, or a couple of Stalkers with Blink and Sentries are. I used to watch Minigun play against EGIdra a lot, and man, there were a lot of games where EGIdra would just kill off Minigun's natural expansion, and then Minigun would recoup with like 9 Blink Stalkers and 6-7 Sentries, and like win the game against like a huge Hydra Roach force. Like, you can do some amazing stuff. F5. Now here's an obvious question by Texas Timmy. Dear Day 9, what was the primary fault, if any, that EGIdra made? It's a slightly difficult question to answer in general, because, you know, in a lot of games it's like, oh, now there's the moment where he needed to split his units up and do blah. But the huge amount of warp prisms is kind of a shift in the overall, I don't want to use the word metagame because I just hate that word, overall shift in the trends and techniques employed by many Protosses around the world. And in a sense, a lot of the logic of Zergs has been, I can't deal with his death ball. Oh, wait a minute, if I go Zergling Roach with some Infestors, I can deal with his Death Ball. It's a very solid composition, the Zergling Roach Infestor mix, in the direct engagements, but LiquidHerO just did not do direct engagements flatly. So I think that a lot of Zergs are going to start to go, maybe I need to just have a slightly different mix of units? Maybe? I mean, even thinking of things like Maro's Zergling Baneling style, where he has all his Banelings and Overlords doing the Baneling drops, that's good in direct engagements. You can wrap around with the Zerglings and drop the Banelings from above, but what if he's doing drops against you? I mean, your Zerglings are pretty fast, maybe that would be pretty good, but Zealots are great against Zerglings. Well, not if you keep up with the upgrades. It can be quite difficult. So I would probably say that compositionally, might want to do some shifts on EGIdra's part, but in terms of like my general life experience with harassment, if you're up against a harass-heavy player, your gameplay will have the following look. I have all my units spread out in ways to deal with his harassment. And I can sort of glom my units together to deal with a direct push, and then spread them back out again to deal with the harassment. But when I want to do a push against you, I need to build a lot of defenses all over the place. We see this in Zerg vs. Terran a lot, that Zerg's like, I'm hitting you all over the place with mutas, I'm spreading out my Zerglings to be anti-drop, spreading out my mutas to be anti-drop, but once I get Broodlords and I want to attack you, I gotta build a bunch of Spine Crawlers all over the place, so that way I can defend against the drops. I think that we're gonna have to start seeing Zergs do stuff like that, but Zealots are really good against Spine Crawlers. If you warp in 10 Zealots, you can't just have 2-3 Spine Crawlers and be like, yeah, I'm in good shape. Zealots are stupidly good in that situation, so It's going to have to be, I think, some pretty significant rebalancing. It could be something as simple as, yeah, I guess I'm just going to have some corruptors wandering around the map to kill off the warp prisms, but speed warp prisms are so quick that you can kind of easily dart away and then go warp in somewhere else and then go into transport mode and then get out of there. So I think that it's going to be some pretty cool stuff. So let's see here. Also, I think that EGIdra is probably a little underprepared for how spread out the Protoss was going to be. EGIdra kept rejoining his army together, which makes sense traditionally, because Zergling, Roach, and Fester is something that's good in direct engagements. LiquidHerO looked like he was going to do some direct engagements, and EGIdra won every single direct engagement, but lost all his expansions and his main. So that's kind of hard. So, Disdixel says, Dear Day 9, does the Templar replace the Colossus that aren't being built with the Warp Prism Robotime? I actually want to steer everyone away from this sort of role logic. You know, a lot of people will say, like, okay, my Zealots are my meat shield units. My Stalkers are my DPS units, and my Sentries are my support, and my Templar are my AoE, you know, and I'm like, what do you guys, this is not World of Warcraft, we're not raiding. Like, you can go pure Zealot Archon, and you kill him with a lot of speed Zealots, and but they're my tank units, but they do damage, it's not a, you know, so, there's some overlap between the problems that arise or how do I say that? Problems arise, and sometimes the solution is Templar or Colossus, and that happens a decent amount of the time. But the Templar are good. The reason I like the Templar, ignoring the Colossus, is because they're very cheap on minerals, so we can continue to produce a lot of Zealots and continue to do the harassment. That's something the Colossus would not allow us to do. If we're building Colossus, we're using a lot of minerals, so we can't really do the Zealot Warpins. The Templar do allow for some feedback, but I prefer them for storms. They allow us to be a little bit more mobile, a little bit more continually aggressive. The Colossus is a little bit more, I'm going to hold up and go for it. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I really like the Templar there. Also, we already have gone down the tech path of getting ourselves a Dark Templar. So we can easily just throw down a Templar Archives. We don't have to like build the Twilight Council and then build the Templar Archives. We can just sort of throw it down. Sure, Colossi are great units in a way that, you know, Templar are not. You don't need energy for the Colossi, but I think that if you want to really keep up the aggression, the Templar are increasingly becoming that good tool for you. Colossi just take so damn long. They're good if you can get a lot of them up, and they're really good late game, but we're starting to see in almost every matchups players steer away from the Colossus, not because they're bad, but just because they take a little bit too much time. And at any point, if you're giving your opponent time, then that can be a problem. I'm going to take two more questions. Louis FC Darcadia says, Dear Day 9, a Roach Hydra Swarm before Hero's Third would have killed him, right? There's a couple of things that I think that are really important to note in that question. You know, little things like, oops, I rewound a little bit too much. Like at this point in time, if we look at EGIdra's cam, yeah, he's taking up his 4th right now in LiquidHerO cam. He's doing poking around and sort of managing the expo count. I don't necessarily think a huge Roach Hydra Swarm would have crushed at this point. We're still getting our Templar pretty darn fast. But this push is one of those techniques to deal with the Roach Hydra push. This is a good way to deal with it. If he has Roach Hydra, you can actually just kill this expansion off quite a lot. We've been seeing a lot of Roaches. It's not like, you know, Nest's games where he'll just be sitting, and suddenly pop out with like 40 Hydras all of a sudden. We've been seeing a lot of Roaches. And this moment right here, it's very easy to look at this situation at moment right now and say to yourself, well, Hero doesn't have that much. If EGIdra had a bunch of Roaches and Hydras, he could have attacked here and won. Technically, yes, if Hero was in this exact moment and EGIdra had a bunch of Roaches and Hydras, he would win. But If EGIdra was going Roaches and Hydras, then that push from LiquidHerO would have gone way differently. And there was actually another push that happened at the north side of the map beforehand that Hero did that would have gone way differently if there were some Roach Hydras in there. And in fact, if I see someone going Roach Hydra, I'm probably going to go Blink Stalker Sentry a little bit longer. I'm probably going to delay my Templar a little bit longer. Just because it's so easy to zone all that stuff and do a lot of damage. So be very careful when you look at a situation and say, hey, right now, X would be good. You have to think about a lot of the stuff that was going on beforehand. And especially in this matchup, we're starting to see Protoss players be really good at just doing these huge forks where it's like, oh, I have a little bit of information. So he actually is never even going to go Hydras here. So I'm actually just going to put that hand away. How do I maximally crush Roach Ling? Go down this crazy huge path. Last question. And yes, I'll be streaming more Diablo 3, but maybe not tonight. Maybe not tonight. Let's see here. Ides of March 33. Dear Day 9, why is the Nidus Worm so underutilized by Zerg? Again, it's a sort of problem-solution type thing, where, what problems were Zergs having? The direct army engagement. How does Zerg solve that? Having Zergling, Roach, and Fester very well clustered together with good upgrades. Alright, cool. We now have ourselves a good solution. Great. We're winning. We're winning the matchup. Yeah! So, I mean, there's all sorts of questions, you know, that people would ask. Like, why not use the Raven in Terran vs. Zerg? And, or why not use this or that in that matchup? And a lot of it is that there's no need for it. There might be a slowly growing need now. As we start to see Protoss players, I think Protoss players will start to expand a lot more aggressively against Zerg. They'll be spending a lot of their resources on harassment, cute non-committal pressure, and some gas-heavy units, and they'll be spending their minerals on cannons, harassment, and expanding. And they can get in good positions that way, and that's kick-ass. I really like that. That quite honestly excites me. So, and I think that as Protoss begin to expand more, Zergs will start to say, well, God, how the hell do I put pressure on him and defend myself at the same time? The Nidus Worm! And it's going to be really good. So I'm hoping that that's how the PvZ matchup develops. I'm done. I'm stopping now. For Fun Day Monday, you need to take 4 bases before you really do anything. Sure, you can build a pool or a barracks or a forge or a gateway along the way, but we're talking 4 bases hella fast because I want to see some crazy base trading, racing, losing, hidden expo action to the maximum. And for Newbie Tuesday, it is the attack timing Newbie Tuesday. Submit to Monday at day9.tv and Tuesday at day9.tv, respectively. For the Newbie Tuesday, again, do the same timing attack between 10 and 12 minutes. Adjust before and after that. Send me the replay pack and some of your written thoughts. I'm done. You guys is amazing. And if you watched live, that's wonderful. But if you didn't watch live, it'll be on tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific again. Sweet. Sweet. See you then. See you then.